being low to the ground is amazing. A neutral grip, neutral wrist grip, and a neutral grip, a neutral wrist. As soon as it makes contact with the ground, that's it. Press skill is over. Yo, what's going on, guys? Rhys here from More Than Lifting with the More Than Lifting podcast. Conversations about calisthenics, bodyweight training, gymnastics, all that good stuff. I'm Rhys, a personal trainer from the UK and founder of morethanlifting.com, and in this episode we're going to be talking about Parallettes. Yes, Parallettes, one of my favourite little bits of training equipment. Yeah, that's going to be it, really. We're going to talk about some skills you can do with them, what they're good for, and what they kind of suck for as well, because there are downsides to everything, let's be honest. Yeah, so that's it, really. Just looking forward to starting this skill cycle soon, and that means I'm going to be using the Parallettes a lot as well, which is going to be great. So first off, what are Parallettes? Like, if you're kind of new to calisthenics or gymnastics, or you've never really heard the word Parallettes before, you'd be like, what the fuck is that? But they're basically like mini P-bars or like mini dip bars or little push-up grip type things. And yeah, they come in various shapes, sizes, lengths, materials. You get metal ones, wooden ones, you can probably get plastic ones too. You can make your own, you can buy them places. They're basically just like push-up grips, or like slightly longer, like handles, or like, think of like broom handles on little feet. You know what I mean? That's the kind of thing you're thinking about when you're talking about Parallettes. And they're basically a gymnastics tool, like training tool, generally speaking anyway. I mean, they kind of show up everywhere now a little bit, but what they're for is for learning handstands and training your handstands, and maybe like planche, I guess, or really improving that for the P-bars. And it's basically, that's it. It's just like some low P-bars for you to train like your handstand skills on. So really, that's where they come from. But you can use them for all kinds of stuff. All right, you can do a few different skills on them. You are limited. All right, you are limited on skills. You can't do dips on Parallettes because they're too low to the ground. So think like push-up grip kind of height, or maybe like up to like halfway up your shins or something. They're quite low, and they need to be, really, because it's about getting over that kind of fear of heights and being on the parallel grip with your handstand, which is completely different to a flat grip where your hands are flat on the ground. So it's important to do that in gymnastics. You can't just jump straight up. Not if you're like me. You just, terrifying at that height. Anyway, so it's generally like floor skill stuff that you can train on them. Things like L-sits, handstands, obviously. You can train your planche on it, which is a really good one for planche because you don't require so much wrist mobility. It doesn't put so much pressure on your wrists because of your neutral wrist position. Crow stands, the same kind of reason, and push-ups as well, like different push-up variations. You can do them on them just so you have a neutral grip, neutral wrist grip, and a neutral grip, a neutral wrist. So that's about it. So you are limited with stuff you can do on them. You can't do a lot of things, but what you can do on them, you can do really well. So you can use them as a great tool for like transitions between like handstands and L-sits, handstand presses, other stuff like that. And because they put your wrist in a much more stable position, you tend to be stronger on them than you are on the floor as well. Okay. So hold on. What are the benefits? So we've already gone into this a little bit. So what are the benefits of using Parallettes then? So first is like your neutral wrist, which I've just mentioned. So basically your hand and your wrist, your forearm are in line. So your hand on the floor is bent right backwards. So it creates this kind of 90-degree position. Whereas when you're using that's a bad position. It's a very stressful position for your wrist to be in. If anyone who's done an hour's handstand training with me knows that your wrists tend to get a bit warm after a while. So putting it in that position, it gives you much better mobility, much better activation of the muscles in your forearms, and actually somewhere you can go to adjust your position. So you can actually use them then much easier to adjust your position in the handstand, in a handstand, in crow stands as well, and cool beans. So that actually allows you to engage your forearms better. So that enables you to actually produce more strength, more force out of your forearms, which in the handstand, generally on the floor, because they're in such a weak position, it can be quite hard to really get a lot out of your hands. Yeah, I say you're going to try and grip the ground, but really you can only wiggle your fingers a little bit. It's not like you can clench your fists when your hands are flat on the ground. So there's not a lot of like range of motion, a lot of mobility in your forearms at that. Range for your actual muscles to contract in that position. So the other advantage of them, which is probably the biggest one, is that they're low to the ground. So when you train in the planche, if you want to train a planche on like P-bars, you're quite high off the ground. If you want to practice your handstand on the P-bars, you're quite high off the ground. Yeah, so this will just ruin your handstand if you're not that good at it, because you'll arch your back, you'll tighten up your shoulders because you're worried about falling over and smacking your back on something, or falling all the way to the floor and smashing your head, which are both very rational fears. All right, but you need to overcome them by doing this kind of training on a Parallettes, so that you're then confident in that position. You're used to adjusting your handstand in that neutral wrist position on the P-bars on Parallettes. So then when you get to a height, like, it's only the height bit that you have to worry about, and you can be confident that your handstand part is on point. Okay, so being low to the ground is amazing. Okay, it's much safer to be low to the ground. You can fall on your face, just lay a cushion there, and you're all right, you know. So you can't really do that down the park on the P-bars, or on some dipping bars down the gym, or something like that. They don't have a lot of comfy pillows about. But yeah, so the advantages then. So the benefits of using them is mostly wrist position and adjustability, and force that can be generated, strength and stability that can be generated. All right, being low to the ground is obviously a benefit, like an advantage, but the main point that these are really good for is just portability. So they're small, you can just chuck them in your bag, practice your handstands on the train platform, you can practice them down the park, really anywhere you'd take your bag. So not in the cinema, maybe they might not let you do handstands in the cinema, but other than that, you're probably pretty good. And they can be used at home, provided you're not like too tall, I guess, so that you reach the ceilings. Like in the UK, the ceiling's pretty low, so I can't use my Parallettes at home, and I'm not even very tall. But you can use them outside in the garden when it's not pissing it down, because it's the UK after all. And yeah, but you can they're really good for your planche training, crow stand stuff, and push-up stuff, L-sit stuff, transitions and things like that. At home you can do them. Indoors is brilliant. So yeah, that's it. Disadvantages then. So obviously there are problems with having these things, right? One of them is some surfaces Parallettes just suck at being on. Yeah, they just slip around, like airports. Parallettes tend to be pretty shit at airports, unless you've got some really like soft rubber like stilts for them to be on, which, this comes to another disadvantage of Parallettes we'll get to in a minute. But so some surfaces they just suck on. So the Parallettes on tarmac, my wooden ones, they just slide about. You can't use them anywhere. On like smooth wooden surfaces, again, they just slide about everywhere. If on the grass, it's perfect. It's lovely. If they're on carpet, they're all right. But yeah, outside generally, they're not too good. Well, they're fine, but you can't be too wide, you can't be, you need to know what you're doing with them, because you can basically put Parallettes everywhere. They're like funny looking giant knuckle dusters. If you like, when you go up in your hands, you need to put them in the right place. Otherwise your weight will be distributed funny, and one of them will slip out and you'll hurt yourself. They're also quite hard to get hold of. All right, or they used to be the case anyway. It's not so much now, but they can be quite hard to get hold of, because not a lot of people make them, and not a lot of people make good ones. So you can buy like Parallettes from places, and they can be shit, and they can still be quite expensive. You can buy like supposedly good ones that turn out to be not as useful as you might have liked because of certain dimensions in them or whatever. There are some really great ones that are quite tall for Parallettes by Gravity Fitness, and they're brilliant. But they also do a low one, like a one that's really low to the ground, which is, even better. But not so much for, like, the thing about it is sometimes you want Parallettes high and sometimes you want them low. Yeah, and one of the times you want them high is if you're trying to do like an L-sit press up to a handstand, or like a handstand negative press into an L-sit. All right, and the problem with this is that your feet want to go below your hands, unless you're like insane at your Jefferson curl and you can like press below your hands or whatever, and you have that mobility and strength to be able to just do it on the floor. Then you need a bit of height, and if you're wearing shoes, it's even worse, because that extra like half an inch or whatever, just as soon as it makes contact with the ground, that's it, the press skill is over. So they're really good for that. But if you want to try and do like handstands inside, then, or try and do some stuff inside, then they might not be that good, because they automatically set you quite high. But the low ones you might not be able to do for those kind of transitions, because you're raised off the ground, but unless you have like, I've got pretty good mobility, that I can flatten my hands down on the ground easy with my feet flat, but when it comes to that press mobility, that active strength and mobility, it's different, you know. It really is. So sorry, that's just one little thing. But Gravity Fitness, they do both of them, and they're really good quality as well. And yeah, so if anything, like, I'd recommend just going to those guys. But otherwise, they can be quite hard to get hold of. If you're kind of a bit like me and a bit like selective about stuff, and you're quite like specific about things you want because of what you want to use them for, you're basically a problem customer. With Parallettes, I'll be honest, I'm a bit of a problem customer. You can just make your own. All right, they are quite niche, so getting the ones that you want in the style that you want might be quite difficult, and they are really easy to make. All you need is a bit of wood, and then a bit more wood to make bases for the things, and some screws. That's literally it. I recommend you get tree stakes, because they're quite thick and they're good for like a hand grip. You can cut them into like however long your bag is kind of length, so you can carry them around. But they only need to really be like the length of your forearm, or maybe the length from the tip of your finger to your forearm's quite a good length. The tip of your middle finger all the way down to your elbow is quite a good length, because that basically gives you enough to do pivots on them as well, which is like, that's a specific gymnastics skill. It's probably not something you're going to ever want to learn, but you got to keep your options open. And for me, like that, I don't want to. So that's in my head, and I can't do that on my current Parallettes either, which is a shame. So I might need to build some new ones. But yeah, basically, guys, Parallettes are awesome. They're really good for planche, all right? Because your planche, if any of you would try doing planche on the floor with your fingers forward, that isn't very comfortable. If you try doing it with your fingers out to the side, sometimes you can go too far, and then you might as well have your hands backwards, and it's really useless really for a lot of stability. You can't use your fingers to help push a little bit as well, or at least resist, and so it can be quite difficult when your hands in slightly wrong places to absolutely mess with your mobility and strength, and you can just fall and lose it. Whereas on the Parallettes, you can actually grab something for a start, so your forearms will be activated. You have much better mobility because your hands are in a much more stable position, and your wrist actually can move in that direction as well, which is pretty smart. So it tends to be much better to do them, much easier to do them on the Parallettes than it is on the floor. All right. Yeah, guys, I've really kind of just rambled on about Parallettes, but they are really cool bits of kit, and they're really useful. So get some / make some, and take them down a park training when it's not raining. All right, guys, that's it for this episode. If you like what you heard, as always, give us a 5-star rating and review. Wink, wink. And honest one, of course. And if you got any questions or comments, reach out to me. Give us a like, a subscribe, share this with your mates, training partners, and other calisthenics enthusiasts. Just go out and just I can't. Anyway, just share this with people who you can go training with, because that's cool. If you've got any questions, just reach out to me at More Than Lifting. And otherwise, I'll catch you in the next episode. And as always, keep in touch with yourselves, and I'll speak to you then.